These are numbers that matter. Some problems take mounds of data and complex analysis to discover. Other problems are so large that no extra analysis is needed. In Oakland, the childhood asthma rate was 7 times the national average. The sheer number of kids with asthma was not going unnoticed by the residents. One of those concerned residents was a local community activist. She'd worked for years cleaning the houses of wealthy Californians, and in her spare time volunteered for local schools. It was while volunteering that 7 times the national average rate was on shocking display.
And used to go to the school district, go to school, local school, Prescott School, and she'd see these shoe boxes in the nurse's office. It was all these inhalers. And I couldn't understand why these kids, I had inhaled because I had asthma, but I didn't understand why these kids had asthma so bad. My name is Miss Margaret Gordon.
In trying to find the answers to this question of why so many children had asthma, she came across the work of Dr. Eiton and the data he published, linking air quality to asthma, higher use of government services, and people dying younger.
Margaret Gordon is, an organizer extraordinaire. And she wasn't coming asking for help. She was coming demanding help and demanding that the health department take this issue up. And, we responded.
It's important to remember exactly what this fight is about. People were dying daily, and children were losing more than a decade of their life with no other alternative.
Who gonna live? That's what it come back. Who gonna live? Not how you gonna survive. Who gonna live through these different phenomena changes? What's happening on Earth? Cause I live in a place where I'm gonna see somebody. You're not gonna see the same people I see.
With a grant from a foundation, Miss Margaret co-founded the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project to find out what were the numbers that really mattered for her community. It was impossible for Miss Margaret to know exactly which indicators would end up being important, but she knew she had to start gathering data to figure out where the connections may lie.
We started out with 250 things. That's from housing to how many kids had parents, how many people was in jail, how many people didn't have good education, where was the jobs, where was the school systems at, who voted and who didn't vote, what was happening in the ground, the soils, how many toxic sites there were here, where were trucks coming to and from, who was the big polluters, what was the health implications by living close to all these freeways and a port.
With this approach, some of the most surprising indicators of health and asthma started to reveal themselves.
The trucks, old dirty trucks, parked everywhere, and trucks just idling the engine, just running the engines. We had to know how many trucks was here. So we had a traffic engineer who trained some of us to go out and count.
In a part of Oakland with only 25,000 people, Margaret's group found
we could have anywhere from 22,000 to 44,000 truck trips in one day.
The trucks used for drayage or short-haul trips around the ports were often the oldest and dirtiest trucks of the fleet. This increased the levels of diesel particulate emissions in the air. Diesel particulates are the small black sooty particles leaving engine exhaust. These have been linked with cancer and other poor health outcomes. Miss Margaret knew she would have to work with city, port, and county officials in order for something to be done. But for a woman who had only several years earlier worked cleaning houses, this task seemed extraordinarily difficult.
How can I be on same par with these other people who worked in banks? They were executives in banks, so they were lawyers, they had their own business, they were accountants. How do I be on par with them and be able to speak the same language? And at the same time, how did I navigate myself in such a place where I could talk about the injustice and how to talk about some solutions.
She helped identify 4 areas where improvements were badly needed. 1. There needed to be a transportation plan to route traffic away from schools and hospitals. 2. The port needed to be electrified to lessen the amount of diesel equipment polluting the air. 3. There needed to be state laws requiring ships to switch to cleaner fuel when nearing the port. 4. Trucks needed to be updated to newer models, which were more efficient and less polluting. These were each very hard fights, but it's worth taking a minute to examine the results of these 4 measures. Diesel particulate emissions from trucks were down 98%. Emissions from cargo ships were down 75%. The city's focus on cleaner air and better quality of life brought in new residents. Houses increased in value, and the downtown area started to surge. It's important to note this because economic development does not have to be hurt by addressing racial and environmental injustice. Steps taken to improve quality of life can increase tax revenue and spur economic gains. The lesson I took away from this story is that residents armed with data can be the most effective advocates for their own community.